Hello and welcome to MS-Auto Live. I am Mark Titar from MS-Auto, and today we are going to talk about front-end development. We have very special guest. She's an MVP, Google developer expert, and she has written a book. Can I say legendary, Nishu? The legendary Nishu Goyal will be with us. Nishu, welcome.
Thank you, Murd. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to be presenting today. And it's my first interaction with the crowd that I'm going to be talking to today. So really excited about this.
We are very excited as well. So can you please tell me about yourself?
Yeah. So once again, hi, everyone. My name is Nishu Goyal, and I work as a software engineer. And as Mert already introduced, I am a Google developer expert and a Microsoft MVP in developer technologies. My work mainly revolves around front-end technologies with most of my experience with Angular, and that's what we are going to talk about today. And hobby is not as such. I just keep exploring around computers and all of that. So yeah, that's about myself.
Okay. I want to ask a question about Angular. What is Angular and AngularJS? Is it the same thing or they are completely different?
Okay, so we are asked this question a lot. Angular is a JavaScript framework, first of all, which helps us build single-page applications. Now, as the question stands, that what is the difference between Angular and AngularJS? So the Angular framework is releasing different versions, different releases of the framework, like every 6 months, around every 6 months. So the first version that came in was AngularJS. So Angular version 1 was actually called AngularJS, which was wherein it was all JavaScript. Now, after that, from Angular 2, starting Angular 2, there was a complete rewrite of the framework. And after that, it was decided that all the upcoming versions of Angular will be called just Angular, not AngularJS. And that's when we adopted TypeScript to be writing the Angular applications with. So that was the major difference. And starting Angular 2, we all call it just Angular, not Angular 2, not Angular 5. It's just Angular.
Okay, you are both Microsoft MVP and Google developer expert in Angular. So what do you do in Microsoft stack? Is it still Angular or do you use other technologies?
So mainly TypeScript. So I've been working around TypeScript a lot. So that's why developer technologies.
Okay.
Not specifically Angular.
Okay. What will you show us today?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about building web applications using the Angular framework. And for those of you who are very new to Angular, I'll try to cover all the basic concepts of Angular, like from installing Angular CLI in our system and trying to build a very basic application with examples like simple component communication. Since we all know the web is currently fully componentized, it's just components everywhere, right? So that's what I'm going to talk about. We'll also talk about navigation in Angular, how we can actually route within a single page application. I mean, single page application sounds like there'll be just a single page and, that will be presenting all the data, but that's not so. So we'll talk about that.
Okay, I'll pass the mic to you and this is your show now.
Right. Okay, so yeah, we'll be talking about building web apps using Angular. My name is Nishu Goyal again. And a bit about myself, I work as a software engineer. I'm working on front-end technologies. We've already talked about this. And I've also written a book on Angular routing, which is a navigation concept within Angular. The router helps us to navigate from one view to another. Now, when I'm using the word view, you'll understand why I'm not saying like moving from one page to another page, but from a view, one view to another view. So we'll talk about that. And the session today will mostly look like this. So we'll start off by talking about introduction to SPAs. What are single page applications? It's not SPAs, it's SPAs, single page applications. Then we'll go ahead and talk about the building blocks of Angular framework. For example, components. What are the containers for those components? Is there a place where you put in all your components and specify that, okay, from this is where your browser understands that, okay, these are the components to be rendered in the DOM. Then you have routing. The third concept that we'll be discussing today will be routing. So about navigation from one view to another. And finally, we'll talk about CRUD operations in Angular, which is dealing with asynchronous calls and performing getting of the data and posting the data. CRUD mainly stands for create, read, update, and delete for those of you who are very new. And first, let's talk about single page applications. So let's go back a bit and try to understand it traditionally. So earlier, when we would have applications, web applications, we would usually imagine something like there's an HTML application and there's one link which leads to the other link, then and so on, right? Clicking on one link will give us a different view, and then we'll get a different view, and that's how we will build our whole application. Now, with single page applications, what we actually do is that we'll not have multiple pages. We are not linking to different pages, but we're having one single page, and that actually acts like a placeholder. Now, this placeholder is basically, as the name suggests, is holding a place for hosting your different views, whatever view. You can call it a component, you can call it for example, a template. This particular view will be visible when you demand for it. For example, you go to slash, like if we take the example of Amazon Prime, right? If we go on amazon.com/prime, for example, it's all imaginary. For example, we go to /prime, we'll get to see the view of the Prime user, the Prime video, right? However, if we are just going to amazon.com, but there's some other route, it will give us a different view. But such applications, single page applications, are actually one application, but giving us different views. It's not different pages at all. So we'll understand this more when we'll be coding our application. Now, there are different frameworks out there that help us. There are different frameworks and technologies actually that help us build our single page applications. We'll be talking about Angular today. We have React, Vue, Svelte, and many others. And all of these are JavaScript frameworks. So the web world is currently totally all over JavaScript, and we are doing a lot around JavaScript to build every kind of application. We have PWAs now, which is progressive web applications, right? And that allows us to basically build an application, an app in the phone out of the website. So how helpful is that? I mean, you don't need to be an Android engineer at all to be building an application. A lot of concepts like headless browsers and everything comes in. But then if you get acquainted to PWAs, which is progressive web apps, and service workers, and there are many other things, then you'll get to know how you can actually convert create your website, which is responsive, which covers the use cases of, for example, using it in an iPhone or in a Galaxy S5, for example. And you can actually use it after creating it responsive in your phone or your website, desktop, anywhere. So that serves the purpose of building an app also. Now, as I was talking about the web being componentized today, as we see in these pictures, we can see that if a particular element is to be built, we can actually build it as a component and place it there in a part of the screen, in a part of the view that's visible. And that doesn't mean that this is one page. It means that, okay, there are 6 components on this phone view, for example, and these 6 components are 5 components are supposed to be built one by one, like, within itself. And these 5 components can then be placed wherever you want to place them, make them reusable. For example, on the next view also, you would want the first component that's visible, first square that's visible, and you can simply pick it up and place it on the other view also. Helps a lot in reusability purposes as well. So that's about componentizing your web, right? Your web is built up of all the components. Another interesting thing that comes in here is that you have the concept of web components. Now, what they really help you with is that, for example, I am only an Angular engineer. I don't know React, I don't know Vue, I don't know any other technology. But I really I've heard about this feature of React, for example, and I really want to incorporate that feature in one of the components in my Angular application. Now, how would you communicate from your Angular application to a React one, to a React component? In that case, what we can actually do is build the component, whatever component you are needing, as a web component. And that web component will then be able to communicate with all the different frameworks, JavaScript and any other, Vue, Svelte. So I will build that particular component as a web component, custom element that your browser renders just like another heading tag or another div tag. and it will understand. For example, let's say there's a calendar component that you really like, and it's built in Angular, let's say, and you want to use this Angular calendar component in a React application. What would you do then? Would you build it again with React? I would not do so. So in that case, what we can actually do is build the calendar Angular component like a web component, custom element, and then export it, either publish it to NPM or use it locally for your own purposes, for example, or push it to a local repository if you want to do so, and then use it in your React application. I have done some POCs around that. So web components is a good concept. And I'll by the end of this talk, I'll share the examples of my web components talk as well. Now, a bit about Angular, since we are going to talk about Angular development, Angular application development. So we know now that it's a JavaScript framework. Earlier, it was called Angular JS when it was the version 1. Now it's called just Angular, Angular 2, Angular 4, Angular 5, and currently the version that we are following of Angular is version 9, plus some patch version of it. And now it follows TypeScript. Now, if some curious minds from you are thinking that I took all the version names, but not Angular 3, why is that so? So Angular version 3 actually never came up. That was because of the because the way Angular repository is designed. And Angular router at the time of Angular version 2 was going through a lot of changes. There were a lot of improvisations in the Angular router, which is basically used for navigation, right? And that's when the router version, after so many changes, went to 3 point something. And since we wanted to keep since the Angular team wanted to keep the same version of all the packages inside the Angular repository, it being a mono repo, they decided to not even release Angular 3, Angular CLI version 3, and go directly to Angular version 4, so that the router and all the other different packages of Angular work in tandem. You would not then have to have a version 4 of Angular router, but version 3 of the Angular other packages. So to avoid that, it was decided that Angular 3 wouldn't come up. Just for some of you who are curious about this. Now, so let's proceed with the development. And if all of you are having your systems with you right now, I would really recommend to be following these steps with me if you're very new. If you already have Node.js and NPM and Angular CLI installed in your systems, that's great. But I'll still go through the process for those of you who are new to the development. First of all, you need to install Node.js, and you can simply download that from the Node.js.org website. You can download it as per your operating system. So if you're using Windows, you can download it for Windows. If Mac, you can do it for Mac. And once you have done that, you can check the Node version using node-v or node-version. If this gives you a proper version, that means your node is properly installed in your system. And to quickly show you how it is going to work, let me open the terminal. And I'll check my node version. It gives me version 12.16.3, if that's visible to all of you. So that means Node is properly installed in my system. Now, when you install Node, NPM comes along with, because NPM is just Node Package Manager. So in that case, actually what I can do is I can increase the font size of this terminal just to make sure it's visible to all of you. Font size. Preferences. Yeah. I'll check the NPM version now, npm-v. And this gives me the NPM version as well, 6.14.
Can you please increase the size because it is a bit small?
Oh, is it not increased yet?
No, it's very small.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very
Yes.
big. Yeah, so this is the Node version that you see currently, and npm-v is the npm version. So if all of you are able to see your versions of Node and npm, that basically means that, okay, it is downloaded for you, it is installed for you. And where is that? Yeah. Now, the next step is to install Angular CLI. If you don't have that already, you can simply check that. I mean, you first off, you can check that using ng space v. And if it says ng command not found for you, which means either it's not installed or you've not given the path, right? So to install it, you can simply say npm install @angular/CLI. And now, if you want to specifically specify the version of Angular CLI that you want to download for your own project, you can specify that using and whatever version you are looking for. Now, if you're not sure of which version is currently going on, right? Then in that case, you can simply say @latest, meaning that you want the latest version of Angular CLI. And you would prefer to install it globally so that you don't have to set the path every time whenever, whichever project you're installing your application in. Now, in my case, I have actually already installed Angular CLI. So it's just that the path has not been set. So I'll also show you the scenario where you have to set the path of your CLI. So I'll quickly copy the path that I have of my Angular CLI. Yeah. Not this. Yeah, let me quickly take it from here. Hope this gets copied now. Yeah, so now what I did was simple as set the path of ng command to whatever, wherever you have installed your ng package. Ng stands for Angular. Now, when this is set, and now if I want to check again the version of Angular, I'll simply do ng space v or ng space version. You can do any of these. Notice that there is no hyphen before v here. Okay, this is very important since in the case of Node versioning, we checked hyphen v. In the case of NPM, we did NPM space hyphen v. That's not so with Angular ng. So you'll simply say ng space version. And let's see what it shows up. This usually does take some time because it's going to show all of the configurations to you of your Angular CLI. And since it is very big, the font, you can see Angular CLI here. And it shows the version of Angular CLI that I have installed in my machine. It also gives you the Node version. The great part here is that it also gives you the versions of different packages that you're using. Schematics or Angular Dev Kit, Architect, Angular Dev Kit Core. So all of these are the development purpose packages that you will need when you're developing your Angular applications. Now, let me go back to the slides because we have installed CLI properly. And if I go here, now we can see that we have installed the Angular CLI properly. We have done that. It is there in our system. I hope all of you are following me and you can see Angular CLI working in your system. If even after setting the path, the ng command doesn't work for you, that's probably because you didn't use the -g flag and it's installed locally, but not globally. So ensure that you're using the -g flag, which is for installing the Angular CLI globally in your system. Now, when that is done, you can finally go ahead and create your first Angular application. And now there are two ways to do it. You can do a manual setup, and that definitely takes a lot of time because you have to set up all the Webpack for building your application and test cases and all of that. So Angular CLI actually helps us do that. And to perform the first, to create the first Angular application, you can simply use the command ng space new space whatever project name you want to specify. So if I show you that quickly, if you want to simply create your, let me clear this. If you want to simply create your Angular application, you can just say ng new and whatever name you want to give for your application. So let's call it mshow2, right? This is the name that we want to give to our Angular application. And this is going to take quite some time because it's going to generate a lot of files for you. So this is very interesting now. What prompt do you see on my screen? It says, would you like to add Angular routing? Now, this is something that came up with the Angular version 7. After version 7, CLI was actually customized to ask you to give you prompts and ask you few of the things so that it makes sure that you get the exact version, that is exact type of application that you want to deal with. For example, maybe it's some POC that you're working on and there's no routing that's going to be there in your application. In that case, you would not want a separate module for routing at all, right? So you can say no here. But if you want to have a dedicated, routing module, in that case, you can just say yes. So I'll press Y because I want routing in my application. Now, this says which style sheet format would you like to use? So you have different style sheet formats that you can actually use, which is CSS, SCSS, all the frameworks of CSS. So you can choose any one of these and go with that. So I will go with SCSS. We can go with any of these. And when I have answered these two questions, now CLI starts generating the application for me. And if you look closely here, there are so many files that it is generating. So first three are not very important. These are just Git files, readme, git ignore. Now you see this Angular JSON file, right? This holds all the configurations related to your Angular compiler options or whatever happens in the background. So if you want to deal with, for example, source maps, when it's about debugging your applications, you can then use the Angular JSON file, and I'll show you what all different flags are available in the Angular JSON file. Then you have package.json. This is the main file whenever you're dealing with any node-based applications, right? tsconfig, it's basically about the TypeScript compiler, configurations of the TypeScript compiler. This is again very important when you're doing some advanced stuff. I'll show you how and what are the options available in that. Then we can focus on karma.conf.js. What is that? So this is mainly about testing. So Angular uses Karma as the testing framework, and that works behind the hood. I mean, this is what Angular follows. So this file configures that information. Then you have, okay, do you see something called polyfills.ts? This is something that this is the file that talks about browser compatibility. So you need to install in all the polyfills which are required for your Angular application to be supported in the different browsers, IE or anywhere. Now, and there is this file called app routing module. Now, this particular app routing.module.ts is generated because you specified that you want routing in your Angular application. So this specific module will take care of all your routing configurations. Then you have some files like app module, app component. We'll look at those and then try to understand. Otherwise, it'll be like a lot of theory in here. So I'll now wait for this to install all the packages properly. And in the meantime, let's go back and see what else we have. So here, now we have created a new application. And now the very important part after creating our application is to understand what components are. So as you can see on the right side of my screen, I say that these are the basic building blocks of Angular. It actually means basic building blocks, not basic building. So yeah, components are the basic building blocks of Angular. And what it really means that your whole application is actually comprised of different components. Just pick one component from somewhere, place it somewhere, and consider reusability. For example, the screen one, view one wants a card component, and the same component is actually supposed to be appearing somewhere else on the screen on screen 2. Okay, you can simply pick up that card component and use it there. You don't have to code it again. This is the best part of using the componentized way of working with SVAs. Now, components actually help you control the view. So this basically means that one component is equivalent to a template, to a view. Every component have a template of their own. Each and every component has a template of their own. Now, this means that if I have a component called app component, there is definitely going to be an app template, app HTML, which is there. It can be in a separate file, or it can be inlined within our app component.typescript file. Well, anyways, and then there is something called directives. Now, component is basically a type of directive. I'll tell you more about what directives are, but currently, for now, you can just think of it as a directive, which is also known as a self-contained directive. Like components particularly are known as self-contained directives. And if I go to a demo application that I've created for all of you, then we'll get to see this is still installing actually. So let's go to this demo application that I've created for you. And if you see here, let's ignore all the other things for now. Yeah, so let us look at this app.component.ts. But is the font okay, or is it very small?
I think you can increase a bit. It's
Okay.
look. Nishu, is there any extensions do I need to install?
Extensions? No, not at all. No extensions for now.
Okay. And that's fine.
Okay, so let's look at this one now. We have our app.component.ts file. This is one component in our application. We will look at the entry file of our application a bit later. Let's understand components as of now. Okay, so ignore all of this, what is written. I'll simply close this class, right? Now I have a class which is called app component. So actually every component or module in an Angular application is going to be a TypeScript class. Now, to specify to Angular that it's going to behave as a component or as a module or a decorator or a directive, whatever, you need to specify some information, some metadata to tell the class, this particular class, that, okay, this particular class has to behave like a component. And that job is done by this particular decorator that you see here, @component. This decorator provides some predefined metadata. I mean, the keys are predefined. And this metadata tells the Angular compiler that this is the information related to this particular component, this particular class, which is actually a component because that's what we are specifying in the decorator. So if anybody asks you that, what is a decorator? Now you know that a decorator is basically a help function, which is actually telling your class that how it should behave, what is the property or what is the configuration that it holds. So in this case, our component is actually app component is actually a component. Now you might be wondering that we have named it app component and this is why it is behaving like a component. That's not so. So even if I call it app service, right, it's still a component because the decorator has the main role of defining what your class should behave like, even if you name it service or a module or a pipe, whatever. So let's just undo that. Yeah. Now let us look at these metadata information closely. So you see the syntax here. I'll simply remove this bit for now or comment it. Yeah, this is better. Now let's forget that what I've commented for now, and let's simply look at this class. We have a class called app component, just like another TypeScript or JavaScript class, right? Now I want to specify that, okay, you have to behave like a component. So you give round brackets, and inside that you want to specify some information. So when I wrote component here, I need to import it from the Angular core package, which is the main package, which gives you all the information like component, modules, and services, etc. Now it got imported here, so I'm good to go. Now my component decorator basically needs three things. First, selector. Selector is very important. This basically specifies the name of your template. So app component should be understood in the template with what name? What should we specify as a selector to reference our app component? So since it's the root component of our Angular application, we simply say app root. Then we have template URL. Now there are two options that you can specify here. If you want to make it a URL, which is an external file, then you can simply say template URL and then specify whatever URL you want to give. Now, since we have created this app component.html file here, this comes with CLI, so you can specify that. But if it is like a very small, component and not much HTML there, then you can simply use template without the template URL. Use tilde here. This tilde basically helps you inline your HTML and simply write whatever HTML you want to write. So let's say H1. Let's call it H1, and inside this you just specify hello 2, right? So this basically is an inline template of yours, and it is allowing you to inline your template and whatever you want to specify. In that case, your app component HTML is not even getting a reference. So this particular component's template will be just this or whatever else you want to specify here. Similar thing happens with styles. So in the case of CSS, right, you can do two things. Either use style URLs, wherein just like above you see, you can specify the file, which is the app component file. But if you want to simply give a, any inline styling, in that case, you can use styles. And then again, you can simply whatever array that you want to, styles is always an array of whatever styles you want to give, that you can specify here, whatever you wish to specify. So this is the inline way of working with your component template and the component declarations. So let's go back and do all of this. This is how your component basically works. Now you might be wondering that why we directly reached component when we don't even know how to, get started with an Angular application. Where does it start from? How does it let the browser know that, how to pick it from, where to pick it from? So in that case, let's quickly look at our index.html, which is here in the root of the application. And if you see here, this is a very basic application which we send to the browser. This is only what we send to the browser. The browser gets only this part and understands that whatever Angular application code it has to render. Let's understand this one by one. So this is basic HTML. You would know there's a title that comes in the browser at the top of the browser. So this is Rescale in this case. Then you have some with device information, a fav icon which should appear in the browser, the icon that you use for your application. Then inside the body, you have something called app root. Can you relate? What is app root? So remember, in the component, we gave the app root selector to our app component class, app root, right? So in the index.html, we are specifying that just use this selector, which means inside the body, just instantiate whatever the root component is. Okay, so this means that the browser now will understand that in the body of the application, I have to render this particular thing. How does the browser get the reference to the component? One is this app root, which tells the browser, but from where does it get the information? Where does it get the data from? That's when main TS file comes into picture. So if somebody asks you what is the entry file to your Angular application, which is a very famous, very important interview question, what is the entry file to your Angular application? This is the one. Let's understand why. Sorry. Yeah. So if you see something like platform, browser dynamic here, bootstrap module, app module, this is the line. This is the whole important line which makes sure that your application, Angular application, is understood by the browser, and these are the different files that it should have available inside it. So what it's basically doing is that the browser is bootstrapping a module. Bootstrapping means whenever the application is starting, this is what it gets the reference to. So now let's go to the app module and see what is present in there that makes the browser, understand. So this is our app module. And if you see here, this is a class, just like any other TypeScript class. But what is the difference? we have a decorator here, right? So let me close this and now let's look at it. Do you see the exact same syntax as in the case of component? What it's doing, it's that it is a regular class which is decorated by the ng module decorator. Now in this case, Angular CLI, Angular compiler actually gets to know that this particular class should behave like a module and not like a component. So now let's open this. Now ng module has its own type of metadata, not like component, which would have a selector and a template URL and a styles URL, etc. ng module basically needs few of the things like this. So it has a declarations array, it has an imports array, providers array. We'll not focus on this currently, and this is very important. Let's look at this one for now. So it has a bootstrap array, which basically means that in the ng module, in our app module, which is the root module, what is the component that you should instantiate, which is the main component that you need to be starting the application with, which should be the root component of your application. So that's where you specify app component, which should be the startup, which should be present at the startup of your application. So that's the role of the bootstrap array. Then the declaration array basically means that inside this module, what all components, what all modules, or whatever, not modules actually, what all components, directives, or pipes you want to specify. So now if I open it, you can see I have all the different components which I've created in this module available here. I have declared them in this particular array so that the compiler in the time of, when the application is in the time of compiling, that's when it should actually have the access to all these declared components. Otherwise, app module would not know about these particular components. And in that case, it would not even render, right? So you need to have a reference to this inside your module. And all of this gives a build time error, so don't worry about that. Then comes the imports array. Now there are times when your app module will need to import other modules to get a reference to the, whatever, for example, package or whatever service that you want to implement in your application. That's what you do in the imports array. This holds all your modules that you want to use in this particular module, app module. So app routing module, if you have, this basically means that routing module that we created. And if you have declared it in the app module, this basically means that this now is going to be available to all of your application, right? Because app module is the root module. HTTP client module is basically used to deal with HTTP operations, AJAX calls and all of that. So we'll talk more about this when we are up to services. So these are some of the examples. Providers again comes in the case of services, so we'll look at it later. Now, you understand what a basic component is. An app component HTML file is basically just HTML that you would contain, and this is associated with your app component. Now, you might be thinking that what are these so many files that we see on the left with the name app.something, app.css, app.scss, app.spec. So we know now that there's a TypeScript file for every component, which is the main file, logic file, business logic is there. Then you have a HTML file, which contains the template of that particular component, the view that the component is going to render. Then you have a CSS file, which is the external CSS styling file. So in case you want to create something here. And then there's a testing file, right? So this particular file, basically, that's where you write all your unit test cases and make sure that all your test cases are passed. So yeah, that's the basic structure. Now, there's a very interesting thing that you should know. Before that, our application is created and you can see it is all the files are generated. And since I have Git installed, it has successfully initialized Git as well. So I didn't need to, manually do Git init and then initialize my application. It happened by itself. So now let's do a thing. I have actually opened one more terminal most probably. Okay, it's not there. So yeah, let's do it right here. Yeah. Or actually, let me show you the different flags first, which are available. So let's say you want to create a new application for yourselves and you're not sure, what are the different options that are available to you. So just say help And there's one very interesting option that I want to show you. So for example, in the initial stage of your application development process, you don't want to have any test cases in your application, and you don't want so many spec files generated in your code, right? Like for every component, I have so many components here, and and I have so many spec files for each of the components, but I am not dealing with unit test cases for now. So I just don't want to have different spec files, and I want 3 files per component, which is the TypeScript file, the HTML file, and the CSS file. In that case, I can simply use the flag skip test, this one, and this will make sure that in the creation of my new application, there are no test files created. So as it says, Ventrue does not generate any spec.ts files for the new project. So very helpful in that case. Then you might want to skip the Git initialization if you don't want to have a Git repository. In that case, you can simply use skip Git. And actually, you can explore a lot of these options. For example, one more option I'll give is, for example, you're working on a library project, and it's not just one application, but then you can have many different projects inside one workspace. So that in that particular case, you would not want to create an application. That's when you can simply say ng new, whatever name you want to give, and you just say that create application flag, set it to false. It will not create any application, but simply create a projects folder for you. And then it's your wish, whatever you want to specify, whatever different projects you want to specify, and what is the configuration for that. Now, moving on, we have seen the component initialization, right? I'll talk more about the data binding and other concepts now. So let me open my slides quickly. Now we know that this is the most basic step in the creation of an Angular application. It helps control the view. Let's talk about directives now. So imagine there is a template that you want to deal with, and there's some extra behavior that you want to give to your template, and it doesn't happen with styling it, and there's some advanced stuff that you want to do. So when you want to change the behavior of a specified HTML element, for example, you don't want the h1 tag to behave like a h1 tag. You don't want it to behave like a heading tag, and instead you want to give it some special configuration on your own. For example, it's some finance application, and you want to really do some security stuff in there. In that case, you can actually use directives to change the behavior of the DOM. You'll understand it more when I'll give you one example. Now, this is the theory. Let's cover quickly. So there are 3 types of directives: component directives, which we just saw, either call it components or component directives. Then we have 2 more directives, which are structural directives and attribute directives. Structural directives are mainly used when you want to deal with the layout of the element. For example, you're using h1 tag, but you want to behave it like a loop, right? A loop in an HTML. That's what your structural directive will help you. Now, there are so many built-in directives in Angular, like ng for, ng if. Now, what it really means is that ng for will basically work exactly like a for loop, and ng if works exactly like a if statement, the conditional statements that we have. Attribute directives are mainly about changing the behavior or the appearance of the DOM elements. For example, change the color or change the animation on it, or anything like that. And the good part here is that you can actually create custom attribute directives also, because in most of the cases you would not, you would want to, have some customized behavior on your DOM elements. And in that case, you create a custom attribute directive. And the thing that I want to talk to you about now is that it's not, this particular thing is not currently in the scope, because it's quite out of scope. So I'll just share this very good, this blog post that I've written, and I think you might be interested in, creating one yourself. It has a Stackblitz link also attached to itself. So let me quickly share that link. And if we go forward, you have seen that we are creating a custom attribute directive. Now comes the very important part, which is about binding the data within our Angular application. You might be wondering that, okay, I have defined a variable in my component.ts file, which is called, for example, name property. How do I make sure that it reaches the template of that same component template? how do you bind the data from the TypeScript file to the template file? So now is the time to get into the code fully and understand these things. So we'll go to a very basic component for now, which is obviously our root component. And as you can see here, we have this title property, which has some name like I am the parent component passing into the child one. Forget all of this for now. Let's simply call it. Let's simply call it MS how to, or let's call it hello. Okay, so let's give it this name. And now I want that this particular thing should be appearing in our template, app component template. So this is when I don't really want, this static text here, but I want to specify whatever my title property has, the value the title property has. So I'll copy this name from here, title, and I want to have that value here. Now this is the first data binding technique in Angular, which is called interpolation. Okay, let me quickly write it here and then comment. It's called interpolation. And the syntax for that is double curly braces like this. And inside this, you can specify whatever property you want to specify, and this will have the value of that property. So I need to specify double curly braces so that it prints on the browser. And I don't want all the other things for now, so I'll quickly comment all of this. So let's save this. Let's save this as well. I want to make sure that my application is running. So now to see that how your application is running or how you should run it, just quickly go to package.json. And as you can see here, we have a script called start, which has ng-serve inside it. Okay, so if you do npm start, it will simply serve your application and you should be able to see it on whatever URL that the compiling information gives you. So in my compiling information is local, it's localhost 4200. So I'll go to Chrome now and open my application at this particular URL, localhost 4200. Let's see what comes up. So as you see, we have a fav icon here, which we were talking about, this little Angular logo, and we have this reskill name here, which we gave inside the index.html. So when this application loads, we get to see the value. So this hello ms how to is the value of our title property, right? And we are interpolating this value on the browser on the template of our app component. And let's go back to the code now. We know that how to serve our application. And if you actually don't want to use any of the scripts, just remember that whenever you want to, compile your Angular application, just do ng-serve. Ng meaning an Angular CLI, and serve basically for compiling your application. Now we have looked at the first type of data binding technique, which is interpolation. The next, let's look at the next type of property. It is called property binding. So I'll go back to the slides quickly. So if you see here, we have covered interpolation. We have property binding now, which seems to have a syntax of square brackets. And let's see how to specify that. So we'll go back to the code. Let me close this. Yeah. So now let's say we have a property. For now, let's just add some property. I'll manually remove this one from here. Yeah. Now, as you can see that there is some other nested component in my app component. This basically means that, okay, there is some component which is called child one component, and it is placed inside our app component, right? Now let's go to the style1 component quickly, which I have nested it inside my app component. Now this basically says that it has a title property again, which is of string type. Now you're specifying the types of your properties because you're using TypeScript. And this input here, this is a component communication technique. This basically means that this title doesn't have its own value in this particular component. Instead, your parent component, parent means whichever component is holding the child component, is going to send you this value title from the parent, right? So I want that this title property should get its value from the parent. And let's remove all of this for now. This is where property binding comes into picture. Now the AppChild1 component has a property which is called title, and you want to specify some value for it. Now either you can hard code or use some variable from your app component. I'll quickly hard code it for now. And let's give it the value property binding, let's say. Okay, so this title value now has a property called value called property binding. And since we also need to display this value inside our child1 component.ts, what is here? Okay, so we'll go to the HTML of this particular component, child1 component, and let's remove this div from here. Let's remove this from here. We simply want that we have a div here. Okay, and this has to display this title value. Now, what title value do you expect? Is it going to be ms how-to, which is what we specified in our app component.ts? Or is it going to come from your child1 component, which is whose value is actually sent by our app component HTML using property binding? Now let's see what comes up. We are displaying it on our app child1 component HTML, which is here. And just to make sure that this is the title property of our, of our child component, I'll simply write child component space this. Let's see what happens now. So I'll go back to the browser. And as you can see, the first property, which is the title property, is coming from the app component, but the child component is sending us the property, which was using property binding. So this is that hard-coded value, which we did using our property binding technique. So always remember the syntax of property binding is this. So let's say I'll not hard code it. Let's quickly see that as well. I want that this title property should actually come from the title, which is specified inside our app component. In this case, what you should expect is now both the values will be ms how-to, right? That's how it should be. Yeah, so this is the title property from the app component, and this is from the child component, but then it gets its value from the app component itself, right? So that's about property binding. And I've actually prepared a repository for all of you. So let me quickly share that as well. Where is that? Yeah. So this is the repository that I've made for all of you, and there's no styling, no good looking interfaces here, but then mostly all of the concepts are used here: forms, routing, CRUD operations. So just in case you're not able to follow me right now, I am again sharing it in the chat quickly so that you can have a reference to this. There is no browser requirement to run this Angular application. I just had a look at one of the questions. So now the next thing is, let me just quickly write here that this particular syntax is property binding. Now the next thing that we should look at is event binding, right? So event binding sounds something similar to that. There's some action and you want to handle that. That's what event binding sounds like, right? So let's look at our child component again, and you see something called output, something called event emitter. What does that mean? Now let us look at our child component HTML. So see, what happens now is that our child component here can have a button. And in this button, I simply specify invoke the parent, right? Now, this particular this particular button has to make sure that when you click it inside the child component, it does some operation in the parent component, right? So I want that on the click of this, let's call any of the methods. Let's say button, let's just call it btn clicked. Okay, let's call this function. So this is the syntax of calling clicking on a function and then calling whatever function you want to call. And now to handle this inside your component TypeScript file, this is what we are doing in the child component. There's nothing about the parent component right now. So here you simply specify that, okay, you have a button clicked component, method, which we just specified on the template. Let me make sure. Yeah, the same one, right? So this is a method, and inside this method, now how to tell this particular method that, okay, there's some operation that needs to be performed in the parent component and not here. I mean, you could simply log to the console from the child component, but that's not the agenda right now. What we want to do is that when a button in the child component is clicked, you want to perform some operation in the parent component. If you're thinking that what is the real-time use case of it, think of a scenario where you have a product card in a e-commerce application, right? And when you click on the counter because you want to purchase one of the items of that, one particular quantity of that item, you click on that counter and you see a change in the cart, which is in the header of the application. Now that header doesn't necessarily need to exist in the same component, right? Because it's kind of a global component and you have a separate component for your cart. So this cart component, which is a parent in this particular case, needs to know that there's some operation, for example, this counter operation that has been taken, that has happened in the child component. This is the most usual, most important and most used scenario of child to parent communication. So this happens a lot. And in this case, I've clicked on the button, which is invoke to parent, and I want to let my parent component know. So that's when our output and event emitter come into picture. This is the third type of component communication. This means that take anything that you want to specify, any variable, and this is output decorator. This is also a type of decorator. This will tell that this particular variable that you have defined foo can emit whatever value you want to emit from this particular component to the parent component. So output is doing that. Event emitter, this is the syntax of emitting the event from your child to parent component. This event emitter can specify any type of property here. For example, you have a defined surface interface. So let's call it title string. For example, this is only what you want in your, in the whatever value you're receiving. But since in this case we're not sure, we'll just give it any for now. Or you can actually give it string also if you're just passing string here, whatever type you want to specify. Now, using this foo element that we have defined, we want to emit that there's some change that has happened, right? Start foo.emit and whatever you want to specify. So in this particular case, I simply want to just notify my parent component that, okay, there has been some change that has happened, right? And I don't really want to capture one value from the child component to the parent component. So I'll just say this .foo.emit. This should work. And my child component looks good because I'm clicking on a button and it's sending me to the button click component. But what is left in this wiring now? Did we tell our parent component that, okay, there's going to be some action in the child component and you need to deal with this? No, right? So that's when your parent component's role come into picture. This is the child that we were dealing with. And now we need to specify what should we specify in this particular round brackets because it's an event. So there's no click event that's happening on this particular thing, this particular component, right? So this is when we specify whatever emit variable we use. So we use foo there, right? So foo is used here. And now you can specify what you want to perform on when this particular operation comes. So let's call it display from child And this actually needs to be inside quotes. Yeah. So you basically want that on the click of foo, you're going to this display from child method, which is a new method which we will specify in the TypeScript of our component. And let me go know if it gets confusing anywhere. I'll explain that again. And this event particularly captures the value that we were sending from the child component. So in this case, if you look at it, we have not sent any value. So holding, having the event property there doesn't really help. But if you look in this other example, we have a counter and we want to send the counter value, that how many, counter, what is the counter value currently. In that case, you would want the event property from this particular foo event handler. Now let's quickly go to the TypeScript file, use this display from child event, and this is our TypeScript file. We don't have that yet here, so let's not get into all this. I'll simply define a method now, or not here. Yeah, so let's just specify this method that we had here, and it can come in any form. It's your wish, whatever argument you want to give. If you want to give, I don't want to, because I don't have any property coming in. Now I simply want to, you can actually set a flag to be as true or false, and on the basis of that flag, you can specify whatever you want to show. I'll simply alert, not console. I'll simply alert that button invoked from child. So this should basically work for me. Whenever there's a click in the button of the child component, the parent component would let me know that there's a click in the child component. So let's go to the browser. Yeah, this is a very basic button now because we are not using any bootstrap or anything. And when I click on it, there's a call, there's an alert from my parent component that, okay, button has been invoked from the child component. Now, if you're getting confused, you should understand that this is the parent component, but this particular thing here is the child component because we are nesting the child component in the app component HTML, right? Now, let's go ahead to the slides. This was about property binding and actually component communication at the same time. Now there's something called two-way data binding. And if you look at it, this is basically about capturing the event and the property at the same time. And if you look at the syntax, this is the the square brackets with inside the round brackets. And this is also known as banana in the box syntax. So this is mainly used in the cases when you want to, capture the property in the input field, for example, and you want to at the same time specify or mention that or display that on the browser. So you're capturing that value. This is one way, which is the property binding. And then there's the other value, event binding, that you want to perform because you want to also display it on the browser. That's when this particular example comes in. So in the repository that I've shared with you, we have also covered the two-way data binding there. And I'll show you one example quickly. To perform two-way data binding, we have something called ng model. So it's not present in this one. Okay, I'll quickly show it to you. So for example, we have input field. Let's call it input type equals to text. And I want to specify that, okay, whatever value we enter inside this should be visible on the component as well. So let's call it text value. Right. You actually don't need to do that. And then you can simply display this value onto the browser also. So this is how your two-way data binding works. I'll simply write here. Yeah, so this is two-way data binding. What you're actually doing is that you're also capturing the property, which is how you are able to show it here, and also capturing the event. What is the event? The event is the user input. Whenever the user is inputting into the whatever value he wants to input into the input field, that's what you're capturing inside this text value variable. That's about two-way data binding. Moving on. We have covered component communication. We talked about input. We talked about output and event emitter. We didn't talk about services. And I'll go to services after covering routing first. This is because we want to look at the different types of components that are available to us and then only talk about what unrelated components are. So routing, this is going to be very crisp because we'll mainly be talking about theory here. So whenever you want to navigate from one view to another, that's when you use routing in your application. And I'll be sharing these slides with you. So if you look at it, there's a URL appended here, which talks about routing, how to navigate from one view to another. And if you look at it, this is the order in which all of your router works. So if you understand this particular flowchart, you'll be able to understand the life cycle of the router and how it works inside our Angular applications. So first thing, whenever you enter any URL into your browser, the first thing that it checks is that if you go to this particular, let's say localhost 4200, is there any redirect that is happening? Is the Angular application specifying that take me to home when the user is trying to hit localhost 4200? If that has been done or if that has not been found, there is no redirect, for example, in that case, the next thing to check is that when you want to go to localhost 4200, for example, the user is not authenticated to go to that particular route. He needs to log in. That's when things like guards and resolvers come into picture. Guards are basically the check on your navigation. There are different types of guards which will make sure that can you activate a particular view? Can you actually go to that view? Or for example, can you go away from this view? For example, you are on a form view and you want to go back from this form view. So you might have seen, alerts like, are you sure you want to navigate away from this page because you have unsaved changes? So such examples are, where your guards come into picture and you can implement guards in your application. Resolvers is mainly when, there's a partial loading of the data. I'll show you more about what that means a bit later. And finally, when all of that is done, then you finally activate the view using router outlet. Now, this is very important. Remember, we were talking about placeholders in your application. So this placeholder is basically a router outlet, which tells that, okay, when this particular route has been hit in the URL, you have to go to this particular view. Show this particular view on this single page because you don't have multiple pages, right? So that's basically it about the router. And you'll understand it more when you dive deeper into, the routing configuration. So these are some of the router events that you might want to have a look at. Navigation start, when you start the navigation, then again, all these events will invoke themselves. You don't need to do anything around that, but you can have a better control on your application if you know what is happening, when exactly the navigation is getting cancelled. So if you imagine now, when would the navigation cancel? So Angular would cancel the navigation only if the user is not authenticated or not allowed to user to navigate to a particular view. So that's when your guard is sending a false result that, it's sending that, okay, this particular user cannot access this navigation. So the navigation will get cancelled. Similarly, resolve start and resolve end will work. And if you want to have a look at, how your router events can be subscribed to, that's when you can simply, subscribe to the router package and see what are the different routes available. And yeah, so it will show you all these different events, navigation start, when is it starting, when it's ending, when is the guard check happening if you have implemented guards in your application. And if you want to have a look at this, how it's implemented, this is another StackBlitz. StackBlitz is the online IDE for performing all your, web-based application POCs and small type of applications. So this is another one that you might want to have a look at. I'll share all these. And in this one, basically, in this application, you'll have to check the console to be able to see what are the different events that are showing up because we are logging that event. Then there's something called child routes. So if you don't want to have all the components at the parent level, there's something called child routes. And I've simply implemented that here. For example, you have a next component and that wants to have some children inside it. So you can have, the third component inside the next component and, multiple routes to that. So in this case, if you see, the next component has child third component and edit next component. Angular also has secondary routes. So you might be wondering, right, that there's just one router outlet. How would you display so many different views on one view? How's that possible? So in case you want to have multiple router outlets on your screen, on your multiple placeholders on one view, that's when secondary routes come into picture. And just like if I show you this in the application quickly, in between mode, I would quickly like to check with you how much time do we have? How much more time?
I think we can continue 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay. So yeah, talking about the router outlet, right? So I'll quickly remove this from here. You see this router outlet, which is actually the placeholder for holding your routing and navigation. Now you might be wondering that how to have multiple router outlets. How will the Angular application know that you should have different router outlets, for example, and which router outlet refers to which particular part of the screen? That's when named router outlet concept comes into picture. So for example, this is the primary router outlet. For secondary purposes, let's say you want that for a child route, go to this particular router outlet. This is also known as named router outlets. Another good concept in Angular. It really helps us, have multiple navigation on one view. Then again, similarly, you can't have two router outlets as primary. So in all the other outlets, you'll have to specify whatever name you want to specify. So you can do that using something like this, named router outlets. This is all about secondary routes mainly. Route guards, as I was talking about, we have seen how can deactivate would work. Can deactivate is mainly when the guard would tell you that, are you sure you want to, whatever implementation, you want to specify when the user is trying to hit the back button or go away from the route. Can activate, which is the fourth one that you see here, will make sure that you're authenticated and you're allowed to, go to a particular view. Can load will take, can load, let's not discuss for now because it's about lazy loading, which I'm going to talk about next. Can activate child is for child routes that we just saw. Now comes lazy loading, and we'll not go into much of code for this one. Let's quickly think of a scenario, just like I was talking in the beginning of this talk. So for example, we have Amazon.com, okay? And Amazon.com thinks that the user should not have to load the whole bundle, the one bundle that they have for the application. The user should not have to load that because it's a very big bundle and it will lead to performance issues and all that. And for example, let's imagine the Prime bundle also comes within the main bundle, the Prime video functionality, right? And I don't really want that because I'm not sure if I'm gonna become a Prime user or not. In that case, what they would do is that they would first check that if the user, after the user logs into the application, they would check that if the user is authenticated as a Prime user, which means he has bought the Prime subscription, then load the Prime module on demand. Otherwise, don't load the module at all. That will make the application very fast, right? So such a scenario is the example of lazy loading. The browser goes to the server, asks for the required files. The server will send back index.html, which is what you require. It will render in the DOM, right? And then the index.html basically demands that, okay, I need some more files which are not available, but I'm authorized to view those. For example, the Prime video, right? So it will go again to the server and the server will give back the lazy loaded files. These, as the name suggests, these will be lazily loaded and will be applicable, will be available to you whenever you need them, but not in the main bundle. This significantly reduces the size of the main bundle. And I also have a stack blitz again for this one to see the difference actually in how much bundle size difference shows up. So I'll show you this example quickly, but before that, let's also talk about a scenario where you might be wondering that now, let's say the user is on demand, the user is asking for the Prime bundle. Again, that would lead to performance issues, not really performance, but user experience, because when he tries to go to the Prime /Prime route, he's getting to see a lot of delay in loading that because the bundle is downloading on demand, right? It was not available earlier. In that case, the applications also have this functionality of lazy loading the module, the whatever route you want to lazy load eagerly. What that means is that when you have downloaded the whole bundle, which is the main.js bundle first, after that, in the background, your preloading will keep on happening. That eager lazy loading will keep on happening. So it will not be on demand. So it makes sure that whenever next the user goes on /prime, he will have the bundle already available. But it's not with the main.js bundle. So there are different strategies of how you want to deal with that. For example, you don't want any preloading at all. You want that only when the user demands, then you want to give him the particular bundle. Or you want to specify, you want to make sure that preload all the bundles because you don't want to, get into a scenario where the user asks for something and it is taking time to download. Now, there can be scenarios where you want that some routes should be eagerly lazily loaded, but some routes should not because you might have some functionality which is very important and you're sure that user will want such a functionality every time. But then there's some extra functionality in your application. For example, the Amazon Flights feature. I'm taking all the Amazon.com examples today. So yeah, if you think of the Amazon Flights feature, now you're not sure if the user will come to this one at all. So you want to keep it in your custom preloading strategy. You want to keep it with the preloading, like no preloading, because you want to see that only if the user demands for it, then only load the module. So that's about eagerly lazily loading. Now, again, I knew that we would not have much time for our CRUD operations, so I have this Stackblitz example here. Before that, I'll quickly show you the lazy loading example. So this is lazy loading, and I'll also open the CRUD operations. In this lazy loading example, we'll also get to see the syntax. Now, one important thing here is that for all of you who are new to Angular, before Angular version 8, there was different syntax for lazily loading your routes. But after Angular 8, there's a dynamic import, which TypeScript allows. So that's, again, very interesting. Let's have a look at that. Not this. Yeah. The syntax is very small. I hope it's better now.
It's better for now.
Yeah. So let's go to our routing configuration. This is exactly the files. This exactly works like VS Code. If you see the interface of this Stackblitz tool, it looks exactly like VS Code, works exactly like that. So we have a routing module. For example, in this case, it is, let me close this to have a better view of things. So yeah, you can see one feature module. Feature module is basically when for a feature, you have a separate module and you've not specified that in the app module. So I'll go to app module now and look at my routing configuration, but we now know that it should be available in our app routing module, right? So let me quickly search for app routing module. Yeah, this is where we have specified all our routing configuration. So now I know that when I go to this main page route, it will give me the main page component, just like here. If this appears very small, I'll open it in another window. And there's a redirect path also, which is actually the first step in the routing events. Do you remember we were talking about that when the user hits localhost 4200 and there's a redirect, he will directly be routed to whatever redirect path we have given. So if we look in this example, right? Yeah. So if you look at this one, let me remove this route from here. And I'll simply try to load lazy load routes.stackblitz.io. And I should only render this one, but since there's a redirect, it will directly take me to the main page component because that's about redirecting your routes. This will take some time. In the meantime, let's look at the routing configuration. So now I want that whenever the user tries to go to the hello path, right, hello route in our browser URL, then only he should download this particular module, which is called hello module. And he doesn't already have any component predefined for this, right? So this is what dynamic import is. So you're specifying that whenever the user goes to hello, not this, hello route, he imports this hello module on demand. Okay, so this is basically the syntax of your lazy loading. And now if I go here in the browser, you can see that I didn't type in main page, but it came by itself. Let me quickly open the console now. So if you look in the console, I'll go to the network tab. I want to see basically what happens when I go to the hello view, right? So I'll clear the console for now, change the route here and make it hello, because that's what I've specified, that when I will go to the hello component, what really happens. So if you see here, the application is trying to fetch the hello component. Okay, there is some debugging that's happening. Let me stop the debugger. I'll share it in the chat in the meantime so that you can try yourselves. Here is the Stacklets link for the lazy load application. And let me see if the debugger has stopped. It doesn't seem to. Yeah. Going back to the network tab, as you can see here, we have this hello component, hello from the routed component, and we have on demand loaded this particular module, which is the hello module, right? This doesn't happen with any of the other modules, but this particularly gets loaded only when we go to the particular hello view. That's about lazy loading your routes. And if you build your application, you'll also be able to see the bundle size difference. So that's very exciting. You should try that. I've shared the link with you. The other example that I wanted to talk about, which is the CRUD operation. That is, so Angular, this is a good error that's coming up for you to understand what is actually happening. So whenever you're dealing with API operations and the API is not available, you want to have some data, but the backend guys are not ready, for example, with the API yet. In that case, you can actually have an Angular in-memory web API. It's like a local, local memory in-memory data store, wherein you can specify whatever, whatever data you want for your API. And it works exactly like the way you'll have your JSON. Let me show that to you. Yeah, so you have created this local DB here. So if you see here, this is the DB that you've created with a user interface and all the data you've specified here. So just in case you don't have your API ready, you can use the Angular in-memory web API. And once you install that, so I'm asking Stacklets to simply get me the package Angular in-memory web API installed. In the meantime, we can have a look at how the service is going to deal with the API operations. So I'm going to be quite quick about it. Let's go to our data service. Yeah, so if you look at it, this is a data service. If you're wondering how you'll create it using the CLI, you can simply do ng generate service. Generate is to generate any type of component or module you want to generate. In this case, you want to generate a service, and then you want to give it a service name. So you can call it HTTP request service because that's what you're dealing with right now. But then, yeah, let's call it HTTP request service. Now the service will be generated inside your application, and you'll get to see something like this. But yeah, we were not inside an Angular project, right? So we need to go inside an Angular project first. cd reskill demo. Let's have a look at what all is available to us. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, now we can run the command. Just go up, ng generate service and the service name. This will generate the service for us inside this reskill demo service, application, and it is installing, it is generating that. Let's quickly see how it generates and how it appears in the application. Yeah, so as you can see, it has created one spec file, the unit test file, and one actual service file. So if you look at this here in the reskill demo, you'll get to see your HTTP request service available here. And this basically has injectable decorator and whatever, however you want to specify the scope of your service. This is the name that you specified for your service. And in here, you can do all the API operations. One important thing that you should understand is that whenever you're dealing with HTTP operations, you have to use a module which is called HTTP client module. HTTP client. That's how you specify it here. And inside your module, add component module, you can simply use the HTTP client module. Now this HTTP is basically going to help you do all your operations that you want to do. So for example, let's call it get products, right? And this is a method. In here, you want to do this dot HTTP because that's what gives you all the API operations. Now get is the main, okay, what happened? Yeah, get is the method that allows you to get the data from the API. In this case, since you don't have a real API, you can use a path like /API/users. You can specify any path for your in-memory DB store, right? And this will give you some data, which you can finally, maybe in this case, you can create it as an observable and return it from here. So you'll get to see all of this in the CRUD example that I've shared. You can give it any type that you want to give. You have to import observable from RxJS. RxJS. And you need to import HTTP client as well. So what I did just now was, okay, let me remove this. Yeah, so what I did just now was clicking on this since it was showing in red, which meant I had not imported it, and pressing command and dot on that's on Mac, and on Windows it's control space dot, control and dot. That will help you import whatever you want to import from your packages. So that's basically about dealing with services. You can check more about that here on StackBlitz. The application looks very simple, something like this. Get users, the users are defined here. And whatever update operation, this is CRUD. Create means writing to the database. Read means getting the data. Update means to update whatever value you want to. For example, I want to update the third, this thing, and with some hard-coded value. So I'll simply update the user, and it says updated model. And if you go back, you want to create the user, whatever value you want to give inside the create user, name, and okay, it's a thing. So let's call it AC, and the model is Samsung, for example, and you simply add the user that gets added. This is about writing to your database. So that's the different CRUD operations you might want to have a look at. And that's mainly in the file data.service.ts. So you might want to have a look at that. So I think that's pretty much it about routing and CRUD operations. And yeah, I would like to thank you. You can connect with me on Twitter with this particular username that you see here. And you can also read my blog posts, which I usually write around the Okay, so I'm saying route for right now. So yeah, you can read my blog post around the concepts of Angular on this blog, nishugoyal.wordpress.com. So yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you, Mert.
Okay, thank you, Nishu. As I'm a backend developer, this stuff is very new to me, and I have learned lots of things today. That was a great experience about front-end development and Angular. I am sure that the audience has learned as much as well. And with your permission, I put this video on YouTube for the people missed or want to watch it again. And that's me. I will watch it again as soon as possible. And many thanks to you, and hope we will do more webcasts together.
Done. That's great. Do we have any questions?
Looking to Q&A section. Did you answer is there an LTS version for Angular? And we have another question. Which one do you recommend to start with, Angular or TypeScript?
Okay, can I see this? Okay, I get it. Yeah, these questions. Which one do you recommend to start with, Angular or TypeScript? So see, to be honest, when I started Angular, it was mainly about building front-end applications, and I didn't have to start with TypeScript as such. You learn it in the process. But then if you're very specific about learning and curious about learning the TypeScript fundamentals as well, it's always an add-on. It will help you learn TypeScript as well. And in that case, if you're comparing, I would suggest go for JavaScript first.
Okay, and a question about the minimum browser requirements. I think you have already answered that one.
Yes, minimum browser requirements to run an Angular application? No, nothing as such. Most of the browsers support that. And actually, if you're interested in knowing that, what are the options available for you for using the browser, you can simply go to this website called Can I Use? And it will tell you about all the browser compatibilities for web components, frameworks, technologies, everything. You'll get to know about that from Can I Use website. So browser requirement is something that can be checked there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nishu.
Yeah, there's one more question that I see. Sorry.
Which one?
Yeah, there's one more question which says, please change the title 1 to title 2. So Saurabh, I would like to mention that that was actually on purpose. So we wanted to confuse the situation where both the parent component and the child component have the title property, but then they receive the property from either the child component or the parent component. What really happens? So I understand it would have been confusing, but quite on purpose.
Okay. And one question. Yes. Do we have any other questions?
Does anyone have any questions? I can share the slides with you, and I've already shared the GitHub repository.
Are the slides in the GitHub repository? Or
no, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to share it.
Okay. If they are ready, can you share it now, or if you can share them later, you can share from MS Out accounts.
Okay, I'll try to share it right away, quickly.
Okay.
In the meantime, if anybody has any questions around Angular concepts or anything in general, so please let me know.
What is the best way to learn Angular basics?
What is the best way to learn Angular or what? Angular basics. Okay, so if you are a person who loves visual way of learning, like through videos, then I would suggest you this course on Pluralsight by Deborah Kurata, and it's called Angular Getting Started. That's like the Bible of Angular developers, and everybody starts from there. So you might want to refer to that. And if you're more of a person who prefers to learn from text and books, then there are some great books out there, and one very basic and very good fundamental Angular book is by Dhananjay Kumar, So let me write the name for that. Angular Essentials. That's a great book, and it will acquaint you with all the topics, basic topics of Angular. Okay.
Are you trying to share the slides right now?
No, I think I'll share that later because, yeah,
Okay.
I'll have to upload those and then share the link. So.
Okay.
Okay, there's a question about observables, right? So, Saurabh, if you have heard about promises already in JavaScript when you're dealing with asynchronous calls, similarly we have observables, which is a little more advanced way, or you can say a lazy way of dealing with asynchronous calls. So, in the case of promise, what really happens is that when you're trying to get some data from the server, make a asynchronous call, what happens then is that you get the response and you would wait for the result. The promise would wait for that. But in the case of observable, it's not a one-time thing. It's more of a lazy thing. It would keep on subscribing to whatever change that is happening and every time give you the latest value. So that's basically the difference in promises and observable. And observable basically helps you to deal with asynchronous calls. So did I clarify your doubt? Any more questions, anyone?
I think that's all.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay. Oh, that was a fantastic webcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nishu.
Thank
See
you.
you
Thank
soon.
you, everyone, for joining.
See you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Bye, everyone.